Hi everybody, it's me, Power Rangers Red, aka Dwayne here. Until I get some action figures from Power Rangers Megaforce, I guess I'll be reviewing video games, VHSs I happen to have in my collection. Anyway, moving on. Today it's Power Rangers Time Force for the Game Genie, or Game Genie, or Game Gear, no, Game Boy Color, my mistake. Now, this was a big deal. When Game Boy started putting all of their video games in color, something that Nintendo should have done by default, but that's a whole different story for a different day. This game was probably the last Power Rangers game to be made during the Siobhan ownership of the Power Rangers. In the past, as I pointed out, most of all the Power Ranger games, at least the ones that first came out to Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, that were approved by Nintendo and Sega for the Super Nintendo and the Genesis, were all made by Bandai, except for Lightspeed and Time Force. They were made by DHQ. Now, many people have not associated DHQ with developing Power Ranger video games. Nobody thought that Siobhan would have contracted with DHQ to make Power Ranger games, but they did. Just like nobody actually thought that Disney would make their own Power Rangers game, but they did. Anyway, so Power Rangers Time Force, you do get to play as all the respected characters. You get to play as West, Time Force Red Ranger. You get to play as Lucas, Time Force Blue Ranger. You get to play as Trip, Time Force Green Ranger. Jennifer, Time Force Pink Ranger. And Caitlin, or just Kate, as Time Force Yellow Ranger. Also, Eric is also the Quantum Ranger. So, unlike in the PlayStation counterpart, where Quantum Ranger wasn't introduced, you get to play as him and control the Quantosaurus Rex, or Q-Rex as Eric likes to call it for short. Now, I haven't really played the game, so I can't really tell you how either the graphics were, or the control, or the gameplay. Now, I do know it was side-scrolling fighting, so I know that by default. The graphics, well, the graphics were probably good, especially even better because they were in color, obviously, instead of being in black and white. The controls, well, I told you I never played it on the Game Boy, so I can't tell you. There might have been somebody on YouTube somewhere who did play Power Rangers Time Force on the Nintendo Game Boy Color and has reviewed it, but I certainly have never played it, so I cannot tell you too much. Now, is this game going to be as good as the, new Power Ranger games that recently came out? Probably it would not be the same. But for old nostalgia factor, this game does have a lot of good going for it. I would assume that this game has a lot going for it. Now, I'm sure all the levels are inspired by actual episodes in Power Rangers Time Force. I'm sure Ranzik and Frax are both involved in this, either working together or working against each other as they were towards the end of Time Force. So, yeah, I think this game was a really good game, and especially. But is there anything different between the PlayStation and the Game Boy counterpart? Maybe except the fact maybe one was disted and one was a cartridge, I guess. Maybe a difference in color, maybe a difference in a difference in the graphics, obviously. Maybe a difference in music, but I think at the end of the day, they pretty much might be the same. Maybe some of the levels may have been different, I imagine. So yeah, that's it. That's my review on Power Rangers Time Force for the Nintendo Game Boy Color. I'll see you later. Power Rangers Red, aka Dwayne out.